So awesome. Yeah, it's good to meet everyone. My name is Jephtah, but everyone calls me Jeff. I am the community manager at Ahoy Connect. So Ahoy Connect is basically a community analytic tool that helps you get more insights on how better to manage your community, also how better to provide data to show the importance of community. So this is this is a workshop. So I'm going to make this as interactive as possible because I feel like one of the workshops or most of the workshops I always go to, they are quite boring and you don't really get so much. But so today I'm going to learn and you're also going to learn from me as well. So I'm going to need your feedback on a lot of things. We're going to create an actual strategy for inclusion in your community. And yeah, we're going to learn a lot of things as well. So yeah, so I would like us to start by, you don't have to talk about it. If you are not comfortable talking about it, you can just pop in the chat and that's fine. So I'd like us to start by actually introducing ourselves with our names, our locations, our pronouns, and our ethnicity. So I'll start first. My name is Jephtah. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. My pronouns are he, him. My ethnicity is African, and that's me. So who wants to go next?
I can go next. So my name is Pedro Hernandez. I'm talking with everyone from Brazil, São Paulo. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm half Italian, half Spanish.
Awesome, awesome. Who wants? I see Issa is here from European living in US. Awesome, pleasure to meet you, Issa. I hope I didn't mess up your name, Issa. I hope that's correct. If you can answer, I can just pop it in the chat. So who wants to go next again?
Yeah, I can go next.
Awesome.
I'm Drew Dylan. I'm based in Berkeley, California. My pronouns are he, him, and my ethnicity primarily, European descent.
Awesome. I think Danica wanted to go next. Sure. Yes.
Hi, I'm Danica. I live in Vancouver area in Canada. My pronouns are she, her, and I am European, half American, half English Canadian.
Awesome. And I think last but not the least is Mackenzie. I don't know if you want to go, if you're comfortable talking or if you just want to pop it in the chat. Anyone is okay.
I'm Mackenzie. I live on the Washington coast. My pronouns are she, her, and I am Filipina.
Awesome. So we have a very diverse set of people from Brazil to Europe to America. So this is going to be fun. I'm really excited. So I'll just start, like I said, a little bit about me. My name is Jephtah. Everyone calls me Jeff. I became the only African recipient for the 2020 CR Roundtable Scholarship. I became the first Nigerian to be awarded COMSOL C School program. I love anime and I love food, which are two different things that I always try and join together. Like in case you have any new recipes from Europe or America, definitely send them my way because I'll definitely try it out. So once we start talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'll always say that this is a safe space. Definitely, we are going to talk about sensitive topics. I think we have some new people joining us. Definitely, we're going to talk about some new topics in terms of some sensitive topics in terms of ethnicity, bias, racial profiling, and so many other things. But I want to let you know that this is a safe space, and feel free to ask me a question or feel free to pop it in the chat if you see something or if you want to just drop a thought. So I'd like us to start with a quick icebreaker that I always do to get to know everyone. So between in front of us, we have two awesome images. We have the first one being this, and the second one being another person. So I would like us to just look at the images and what is the first thought that comes to our minds. When we see the first image, what's the first thought that comes to our mind? Anyone can say anything.
when I see the two young boys, I just see that I see their feelings on their face. You know, they are, I don't know if it's worried or something. And then the other person is in joy. That's what I see, the feelings, the emotions.
Awesome. Feelings. I like that. Anyone wants to go again?
I see something here because we see the two ones making a sign, and maybe that means something that we don't know from not being from that culture. So it can be something positive, something fun, but from their face for us that don't know, just feel something that is bad or provocative.
Okay, awesome. I like that feelings and that thing. What about anyone else want to go next? Like, I just need 2 more people to give me their input. Like, when you see the first 2 images, what comes to your mind?
For me, it reminds me of my youth. I was born here in the United States, but I have relatives from the Dominican Republic. And when I went back, this is kind of like what I would see all the time. It looks to me like they're being scolded, and it's like, are you listening? And they're like, yeah, we're listening. That type of situation in my mind, because I envision myself as that child, like growing up. Even though I didn't grow up in the Dominican Republic, I grew up here in Lawrence, Mass. But I can relate to those, to that. It precedes me getting into some shenanigans, by the way. So I'm getting like reprimanded for something that I most likely was getting, I had fun just before this picture. And then I was telling, oh no, you have to correct yourself. So yeah, so I was mad that I either got caught or something. So that's just me.
I like that. I like that. What about the second image? What comes to your mind when you see it?
For me personally, it looks like a level of achievement, like a person that, happiness, they're doing a profile on me. I've worked hard. It looks like he's an artist. He's just like living that life of like, yes, and thinking back at all the hard work. Now I'm getting some recognition. Now I'm getting some visibility. So that's just what I see.
Awesome. I like that. That's a different perspective. Youth, feelings. Does anybody want to go next? Like the last person, and I'll actually like say what the image is all about.
I just put in the chat, when I see that, I see it with the tattoos, the hair, the beard. He looks a lot like my own son, who's 26, and I see a man who comes from a life of privilege.
I love that. That's nice. So actually, everyone here just did a hidden bias test. So I'm going to talk about the 2 images that you just saw. So the first one is actually 2 young men, which they're not actually young, but they are quite old. And they have kids, and they are very popular actors in Africa. So this is one, and this is the second one. But based on the impression and based on the image you all saw, I think most of us assumed they were children. Meanwhile, they are probably older than most of us here, but they just look like kids. That's the first image. While the second image is actually one of my favorite musicians, and he's actually a Christian musician called Brandon Luke, and he belongs to a popular brand in the US. So basically the idea is each of us has bias, like subconsciously without even knowing it. When we each saw the image, the first thing that came to our minds were, hey, these are probably little kids, or this person is probably a musician, but that's not how it seems. Like both children here are very old, like almost 40, but they're very young. They are each suffering from what you call dwarfism. And that's like how it brings up to our next topic, which is bias and how to identify bias. So before that, I'd like us to actually watch a video to probably explain more before I dive into like what we are going to talk about today. So let me just start it again.
in the garden, there's a caterpillar and a snail, and they're basically best friends. They hang out 24/7. They do dinner, movie nights, crafts. Oh, and they're like really into cosplay on top of like whatever else caterpillars and snails do, like eat leaves or something. Anyways, one day they're on their way to a party that's right outside the garden, and they have to go through the fence to get there. So the caterpillar goes right through, but the snail is stuck. Her shell is just too big and it won't fit under the wire. So she's like, crap, I can't get through. Maybe like, can you lift up the wire, or maybe we can build a little bridge or something? And the caterpillar's like, dude, just go under. But she can't. There's just no way that the shell is gonna fit. And the caterpillar's like, go under, come on, we're gonna be late and I'm trying to hook up with that super cute ladybug. But it's not happening. The shell will not fit under the wire. And at this point, Snail's getting kind of frustrated because it's not like she doesn't want to go to the party, but for some reason, Caterpillar just isn't getting it. Yeah, it's not that easy for me. I just can't crawl under the fence like you can. So I would really appreciate your help here. Maybe we can like go a different way, and this just like sets the caterpillar off. What the heck? Just because I can crawl under stuff doesn't mean that I have it easy. Do you even know what it's like to have 16 feet? You don't, because finding shoes is a complete nightmare. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not saying you have it easy. I'm just saying I can't go under the fence because of my shell. That's it. I have a shell and you don't. And there's some stuff that's easier for you that's harder for me. Just like I don't know jack about finding shoes because I don't have feet. Caterpillar thinks about this for a second and realizes the snail is right. I mean, he's never had to think about shells or slimy trails. And that's a privilege that the snail has never had because she has to think about that stuff all the time. That's part of being a snail. And it's kind of like that for everyone, right? I mean, we all have our own struggles and challenges, and some of them are small and some of them are huge and really unfair and beyond our control. And a lot of the time, it can be hard to see what someone else deals with because you've never been in their shoes or shell. I mean, like maybe you're gay or trans, have a disability or different religion, or of course, the obvious one, you're a member of a different race. I don't know what it's like to be you, and you don't know what it's like to be me. So it's really important to stop and try and see the other side so we can help each other overcome those obstacles together. It's like sometimes you're the snail, and sometimes you're the caterpillar. Oh yeah, okay, so then the snail and the caterpillar figured out that if they went to the other side of the garden, they could get through a little break in the fence. And while it took a little longer to get to the party, they did the trip together, which is what made it so great. So they got to the party, the caterpillar hooks up with the ladybug, snail taught everyone how to do the wobble, and the party was everything. The end. This video was illustrated.
So that's just a very good video I came across that I always feel like everyone should watch in terms of like how to explain it more in terms of like diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I don't know, I think Neme has her hand up. I don't know if she has a question for me. Neme, do you have a question for me? Okay, I don't think she can hear me. Okay, if you have a question, just pop it in the chat. So basically, the video we watched was about privilege and how privilege affects our lives in terms of like work culture, in terms of like economical status, in terms of like personal life. And it sort of explains how you're not in a, like you don't know how to feel if you're not in someone's shoes, basically. For example, I don't know how it feels like to be a white woman in the US. So if you are telling me, hey, Jeff, like, I'm probably going through a lot as a white woman, I'm like, okay, I get you. But in the actual sense, I don't actually get you because I don't know how it feels like to be a person, or a Black woman in the US, or a Mexican in Asia. And that video just compasses like how to understand privilege and also how to provide allyship. So we're going to be talking about DEIB in the actual sense. So I have a cute acronym I always like came up with in terms of helping you understand DEI in the easiest way. So diversity, what is diversity? We'll always hear the word being diverse. We are, I think a lot of companies in the US do that. No shade to anyone. Like in terms of the job applications, you always see we promote diversity and inclusion and equity, but I'm going to talk to you about what diversity means to me as well. And I also love to hear what everyone thinks diversity means to them. So diversity is all about representation. Representation of who, what, them, they, and whatnot. Representation of people, regardless of their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion. Like diversity is all about how do you represent this group of people. Equity is all about fairness, because a lot of people are like, equity is how you want to be treated. Like as a Black person, how will I want to be treated if I go to the airport and I'm racially profiled just because I'm Black? Or as an Asian person, how do I feel when in my class I'm being stereotyped as being smart just because I'm Asian? Those are about equity. Like that's equity. Like how do you treat people the way they want to be treated? Then inclusion. In lots of like Wikipedia blogs and whatnot, you see inclusion is all about contribution. But I put the word intentional, because you can let someone contribute, but the person might not really have a say. But if you're intentional about it and there's allowance, that's actually diversity. Because a lot of communities say they are diverse. Let's say they have one Black person or one Mexican, but that doesn't really make you diverse. Diversity is when these people are actually allowed a say to like contribute to ideas, contribute to programs, and also like speak out and be heard. And the last one is belonging. So belonging is centered around gaining acceptance. Like, how do I feel among in my own unique self? As a Black person, how do I come to this community? I don't have to water down or code switch or adjust my tone or adjust my voice to fit in, but I can fit in the way, like my unique self, I can fit in as a Black person without having to water down my culture. So I love hearing what diversity means to different people. So I don't know if anyone has like a different definition. Like I would love to hear it. Like, what does diversity, what does equity, what does inclusion, what does belonging, what do they mean to you in your own unique way and in your own individual self? Feel free to pop it in the chat if you don't, if you are not comfortable talking, like it's still fine.
Yeah, I don't know where best fits, but I think like the summary of the three ones is like everyone has a voice. So I don't know if it's inclusion, diversity, or equity, but everyone has a voice and it is equally have the same weight when taking decisions or just acknowledging what the person has to share.
Awesome, awesome. Does anyone have any other options to add? Like, what does diversity mean to you, like as your own individual self, like as a Mexican, as a African, as a Black person? Like, what does diversity mean to you?
To me, it means difference. And I also look at it also, I studied engineering, and having different perspectives on different things becomes important, say in the scientific community, because it allows you to have major breakthroughs. So same thing for people that come from different cultures, it gives you a sense of, you know, how other people are doing things or how they view the world, so that way you have a more complete picture. So the more diverse you are, the more complete a picture becomes, the better you understand it. Equity is the positioning, in my opinion, of having, as it say, fairness, you know, come from equal, the way I look at it. But equity is more you're part of it, you're contributing to it, you have an equal stake into it. Inclusion is you include people on the team, but it doesn't necessarily mean you belong. This happens a lot where someone gets hired of a different culture or different circumstances, and that person doesn't stay long because they never felt like they belonged. They were included, but they didn't belong because they didn't get the reception of, you know, that contribution. So inclusion and belonging are extremely important, and they're both important together. But one in of itself is not necessarily beneficial. Yeah, so you could fit in and you could stand out simultaneously. And I think that oxymoron sometimes confuses people. So those are just my thoughts. I had a client that I helped them promote a book that was all about this. So I really dove deep into like all these types of things. So this is fantastic. Thank you for hosting this.
Yeah, I love that phrase. You can fit in, but you can stand in. I'm seeing from Isa, she says we are all from Earth, yet they are old and often unconscious conditionings related to ethnicity. Isa, are you comfortable talking about that, or do you prefer like just putting it in the chat box?
No, I'm okay. Well, what would I say about that? You know, the highest wisdom is really to know that we are all brothers and sisters on this planet, and yet they are conditionings that and that's what you are talking about, that create some stigmas on people of colors in the US, in Europe, or you know, now it's also about choice of gender, I suppose, you know. And although we want to include, the way I experience it, you know, is like something in the back of the head is just clicking when there is a difference, when we perceive a difference. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm trying to pronounce her name. I hope I don't mess it up. Kelly Kume. I hope I didn't mess up your name. Sorry about that. Kelly Kume, Olisa, Lagos, Nigeria. Awesome, I'm from Lagos too as well. So Kelly Kume, do you care to share what diversity means to you? Or if you're just comfortable popping it in the chat, that's still fine.
Okay, hi, Jephtah. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. You might hear my son in the background. That's why I'm on mute all the time. So for me, basically, I think because of my location, we don't really have diversity issues. What we have is more of ethnic issues because my country has a lot of ethnicity. But based on the research I've done, due to some of the jobs that I've done, because I also freelance on the side as a writer, most of the time they're always conscious that there are other identities apart from being white. So you have the Asians, you have the African Americans. So when I get to do some sort of writing jobs like that, I have to take note of pronouns and make sure that whatever I'm writing is going to be comfortable for whatever race is going to read it. So that for me basically is diversity, knowing that whatever you're putting out there, you have to be aware that there are other countries and people that are going to be reading that. So they need to be also comfortable reading what you're writing.
Awesome, awesome. I love that everyone, which is what I wanted to point out, everybody has a different meaning or a different explanation when it comes to diversity. But there's one factor that is around, and that's like belonging, that's acceptance, like having a voice, giving people that platform. But everyone still has their own way of defining diversity. And trust me, I know, speaking to someone in Asia, speaking to someone in Africa, speaking to someone like she said, diversity in Nigeria is about ethnicity, but diversity as a whole spectrum talks about sexual orientation, talks about religion, talks about gender, talks about a lot more things. There's diversity, there's neurodiversity, there's diversity in thoughts, there's diversity in ideas, but everyone has their own definition of what does diversity mean to them. So there's actually a quick formula that I took from someone that I respect in the industry. That's Shanna Summers, and she works at HubSpot. So she said, what makes, oh, I think someone is not muted. What makes a community inclusive? That's intersectionality plus inclusion in DNA of the community equals to intentional communities within the community. So intersectionality is basically how people of color intersect with the society. For example, I am an African person and I come to the US. Obviously, this is a new culture for me. I might find it hard to adapt, but automatically I am drawn towards Africans that are there. And this is just subconsciously because we tend to move to things we are more comfortable with. For example, if there are 50 people in a bar and there's only one African person, or there's only one Black person, my mind automatically goes to that person. And subconsciously, I find myself looking at that person and going to meet that person because of we are very comfortable with things we are familiar with. So inclusion in the DNA of the community means the community is naturally inclusive, not because of they want to create a marketing strategy or they want to have that quick tick that, okay, yeah, we are very inclusive in terms of hiring, but actually the DNA. And most inclusive communities I've seen, from the team alone, you know how inclusive it is. Like one quick fact one quick hack I always do before I join any companies, I always look at the team. So for example, I go to a team and I see majority of white males, majority of white females, and I don't see any African. Obviously, I might be the first African, but to me, I'm like, why is there no particular person of this color from like in your company? So that's like inclusion in DNA, from the team, from the structure, from everything. You can see that this is actually diversity from the bone of the company. So we're talking about inclusion in the community space. And these are like some tips I know for practice to include in any community you have. So if you're starting a community from zero, you already have a community, these are ways you can actually like practice that inclusivity in your community. So Loom actually has one of the best stance I've seen in terms of like their stance on their code of conduct in terms of diversity and why they stand for diversity. So I'll just pop that in the chat. Then we can all check it like whenever we are free. But they have a very, okay, someone already popped it in. Then another way we can practice inclusion in our communities, create opportunity for leadership. So if you notice in the video we watched, you saw how it was very hard for the snail to like actually pass the fence and how the slug just passed, or how the butterfly, wherever it just passed. And that's the thing with privilege. Most people don't even realize they are privileged until you actually like step out of your bubble. For example, I spoke to a woman who grew up in like a very white dominated place in the US, and she had never seen any Black person. And she had never, like, always around people that looked like her. So when she moved out of that place, she was very taken aback that, hey, there are actually people that do different things apart from me. And that's just a bubble burst. Like, she left her comfort zone. So I think when you identify from a place of privilege, how do you help those who are underrepresented? And that's when the opportunity for leadership comes in. For example, leadership can be just an event. Like community events, I always try and add people of color, not because they are people of color, but because they actually like have done the work. So I always try and make it balanced, like have opportunities for people of color to be in leadership position, whether it's in your community plans or community events. So the next one is transparency in community updates and programs. This is quite tricky because there's a word that is used everywhere, which I find that most communities are not, and that's community-led. A lot of people use that word being community-led, but not every company is being community-led. And how you can know a company is community-led is, can the company survive without its community? If it can't, it's community-led. But if it cannot, if it doesn't matter, the company is literally not community-led. So creating transparency in community updates is key to actually creating an inclusive environment. Transparency in the sense of if an event is not going to take hold, or if there are issues, you let the community members know that, okay, this is being handled. Even in handling issues, because I've joined so many communities that we literally don't hear feedback till the day of the event that, hey, it's not going on again. And I always look like, why didn't you just tell us since? Then, one of the best things I always say for creating an inclusive environment is celebrate your community members. Like, everyone likes that feeling when you're like, hey, you did a good job. But if you can get committee members just from the littlest things they do, from like, let's say answering a question or answering and being part of an event. And this is me speaking for myself, but when I first started joining communities, I did not have that sense of belonging because I felt like I had to water down my accent. I had to dress a certain way. So I wasn't being unique. So when someone would just tell me, hey, you did a good job, it will literally boost my morale until I realized that I can be my own unique self in my own unique way and still have a say in the community space. And that's how we are talking about this topic today. So yeah, I know that was a lot to process in terms of like what I just said. But I always, like I said, this is a workshop. So we're going to actually like create something here. And we're going to create like inclusive practices you can add to your community. So like I've mentioned that, I don't know if anyone has any other inclusive practice that you think can be added to any community. And yeah, we'll create a list right now and let's go.
In the communities I'm part of, what I always did and what I try to do is to give voice to members, to different members. So either creating content, telling their stories, or just interviewing different community builders and creators to get different perspectives from their journey. So just try to make the content not about the community, but from different members.
Awesome. I think that's a very good stance in terms of content, even in terms of like branding. When you go to a community and you see like images and most of them are particularly dominated by a particular race, it sort of makes a stance like, okay, maybe there's not really diversity here. So does anyone here else want to have like add something else to our inclusive practice to implement in your community? Feel free to pop it in the chat if you don't want to talk, like it's still fine. Okay, I think that's it from Pedro. So yeah, like he said, in terms of like content is very tricky because I think during the George Floyd incident, a lot of brands came out to claim their stance on Black Lives Matter. And that was just like a label checklist because most brands, they want to be labeled as racist. But when it comes to content in community space, you are looking at a whole lot of things like inclusive language, like what are the languages used in your community? For example, in parts of South Africa, there's a word that if you say is a racial slur. But if you leave South Africa and say this word, it doesn't mean anything. So how do you create a community where everyone's unique perspective, unique culture is respected? And I think inclusive practices are always key. Like Pedro mentioned, like content is key. Like how do you tailor your content to like everyone, not just a particular race? And yeah, that was awesome, Pedro. So after inclusive practices, I think the next thing that is very key is safeguarding your community members, because people join communities for different reasons, whether it's career, for career purposes, to have someone to talk to, like just to meet people that are like-minded. But definitely in a community, you definitely get trolls. You get people that actually want to put harm to a community. So how do you safeguard your community members? When it's issues of racism, homophobia, sexual discrimination, sexism, there should be zero tolerance for it. And I'll always say, when these issues come up in the community, it should be an outright ban, because your code of conduct should clearly state your stance on how you handle racism, how you handle sexism, how you handle homophobia. Some communities give you a suspension or like give you like, or tell you like it's not allowed. But I look at it in this way. Someone that has probably said something that is homophobic or sexist or racist is probably going to say it again. That's why you should have like a zero tolerance for rule of thumb. But before the person is banned, education is important. Like tell the person, this is our stance on this certain issue. It's not allowed, and this is why you have been banned. Because people will just feel like, why was I banned? But it's the code of conduct. Then, as community managers or people that are interested in building communities, how do you understand when to step in as a facilitator plus freedom of speech? So sometimes there will be a little clash in the community, and most community managers always want to like be the person to step in and like, hey, let me help out, or don't worry, I got this. But sometimes actually having a neutral stance is key, because sometimes community members can actually solve it themselves. And when a community is so intrinsic, like not intrinsic, when it's so like well knitted together, community members will actually step up to help you out. And also, how do you create an unbiased view? For example, I'm building a community where there are Africans there, where there are Indian people, where there are people from US, people from different parts of the world. But if someone that is from my particular race does something that is harmful to the community, I can't be biased about it because the person is from a particular race. I have to take a neutral stance and say, hey, even if you are from Nigeria, even if you are from South Africa, what you did was wrong, and this is our code of conduct. So it's always good to have an unbiased stand when you're dealing with like issues of trolling and bullying. So yeah, coming to an end, so it's going to be very, like, I can't wait for your questions. So there's a word that is always, it has always made me very interested, and that is allyship versus saviorship. So I'll give you a particular example that I faced personally. So during the heat of the Ukraine versus Russia war, there were some African immigrants that were not allowed to like cross the border because of their skin color, because they were African. So someone made a post on a community I belong to saying African immigrants are denied access to go to the border. And someone commented and said, African, what was the word the person said? Someone said, African people are not, it's not just African people that are discriminated against in Ukraine, but people that are different. And I was like, sorry, please explain what you mean. And he said that African people are discriminated against, doesn't deny that. But him, like himself as a Russian person, when he went to Ukraine, he was discriminated like upon. And I'm like, that's just called, there's a phrase for it called whataboutism. So if you Google like whataboutism, it's basically if I say, hey, I stubbed my toe, or I hit my head on the wall, and you're allowed, and you're like, what about those people that have been hitting their heads on the wall? You're not the first person. So it sort of covers the issue at hand. And that's what this person was subconsciously doing. Like there was a pressing issue, and that was Africans being denied access to like Poland. We're not dismissing the fact that people are discriminated against, but right now the pressing issue is Africans being denied. So when you came on and you said that, it sort of overcrowded like the issue at hand and sort of gave attention away from what people were facing in Ukraine. So that's just a typical example of allyship versus saviorship. So we might try to say we are allies, but subconsciously we're actually like imposing. For example, you might say you're an ally of the LGBTQ community, and you're like, okay, you want to make a banner, and you want to make like, you want to highlight people, but the person might not want to be highlighted. The person might just say, I want to be left alone. But you as an ally, you might like, no, we want to highlight you in our community. And that's overstepping, because diversity also states that you let people be the way they want to be and the way they want to be treated. So if members of the LGBTQ community say, okay, I don't want to like have a stance, I don't want to be that person of like interest, I just want to be a gay man in a community doing nothing. As an ally, you're meant to let that happen. So that's how you now subconsciously say, okay, did I overstep? Like how is this person feeling? And that's where empathy comes into play, because without empathy, you will be like, okay, I don't know how to address these people. So another example is when a racial slur is used in a community, what do we do? like some things are faced in communities I belong to. When a racial slur is used, even if the person is banned, the person that it was used against might not even want anything, might just want to be left alone. And as a community manager, you have to respect that. Because yes, it was a harmful word, but if someone that is facing it says, I don't want anything to be done about it, it's in your own right to say, okay, anyhow you want to handle it, I'm here when you want to talk. So yeah, I think this is one of the last slides I'm going through, and that's how do we ensure we create a safe space for members to be vocal, because a sense of belonging is something that every community tries to create, but not every community can create. Because sense of belonging is not just coming up with community strategies and coming up with engagement tactics, but it's actually like listening to your members and giving them a say. So like I said, one of the key ways is transparency in community moderation and politics and policies. The second one is having a feedback channel. I think some communities now have a rant channel, and this should be anonymous, like when they can actually come and talk about things they are facing. Like, I think one of the communities I know has a rant channel, like people come there and talk about work, talk about life, like, and it's cool because you are able to like rant it out. And the last one is being accountable. Like, accountability is key. Once your community members know that, okay, if someone does something, whether you are in a C-level position or you are a community leader and you are held accountable for it, it creates space for members to be vocal. Because if an issue is reported and nothing is done, I think the person will never come forward again. The person will just say, hey, there's nothing to be done. But when people are held accountable for things that happen, bad or good, I think it creates transparency and it creates a sense of belonging for members to be expressive in your community. So yes, these are some resources I have that we can also check out, like the link to the video I played, a hidden bias test that we can all do when we are free. Let me just pop that in the chat. And a book. I think this book is really nice. Like the book I saw, like why white people don't talk about racism. It helps you understand like as a person, like how do I understand privilege and what do I do about my privilege? So yeah, I think we're able to like get it on time. I don't know if anyone has any questions, has anything to do, but before that, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always free for any conversation when it comes to like community building and DEI. Here's my Twitter, and also here's my community if you want to join. Like, we're trying to create an inclusive space for people of color, people of different backgrounds, so feel free to join as well. So yeah, I think Pedro was telling me I have a little time left, and I think I was able to get it on board. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I know it was a lot to process, but I feel like I said, we have to learn from each other. So if you have any questions, you can pop it in the chat and I'll answer to the best of my abilities.
Thanks for everything that you shared, Jeff. And I have a question, like something that is very hard on communities is to enforce the guidelines. So it is hard to, we can address it on the onboarding, but like most people don't actually read the guidelines or doesn't follow the onboarding sequence. But something that I am kind of curious is if you have an example, like I kind of see that to best enforce the guidelines and diversity and for everyone to be respectful is to constantly share the values. So not by making people follow guidelines, but if you always share your values, then people will understand what your community is about and what they should be doing there and what they should not be doing there. So I don't know if you have any examples or some thoughts on how we can better enforce the guidelines or just speak true by sharing values.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. That was actually a very good question because most people don't read code of conduct. I was one of them too. Like as soon as I join a community, click acceptance and condition and I leave. But I think when the community is, especially if it's for example, an initiative community or okay, let me give an example. If you have a community for Black people, a community for the LGBTQ family, or a community for like a sensitive topic, is different from when you have a community for a product or a fintech company. In terms of values, I think when it comes to like sensitive topics, it has to be something that is constantly communicated because definitely these people are at more risk than a community that is just for products or for fintech. And I think constantly reminding people about your the values, especially in sensitive communities, is key in terms of like what you are doing and how you are going about it. But for non-sensitive communities, when these topics come up, I think they will definitely will. Like you always go back to your code of conduct. For example, if someone says something and a member is feeling threatened about it, it's good to like reply on the thread below and say, this is not allowed. Like go back to our code of conduct to see. And your code of conduct should be in such a way that you have, penalties for certain things. Like one strike is maybe a suspension, second strike is like 2 weeks suspension, then third strike is like banned. So always referring back to your code of conduct in conversations sort of reminds members like, hey, we actually have a code of conduct we can see. Because if someone says something and you refer back to why you shouldn't say it, at a point, people will start noticing, especially if the penalties are strictly enforced. But for, like I said, for sensitive communities, you just have to constantly remind them in events, in community MS, like everything, just constantly remind them that this is a safe space for you. You can be your unique self in any way you want to be. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks again for sharing.
Well, I think Danica is going. Bye, Danica. It was awesome to meet you. I think she has left already. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions or any contributions. Like I said, I love learning, like learning about what things mean to you, because that's how we are able to grow by constantly learning. So does anyone here have any contributions or any questions to ask me? Feel free to pop it in the chat.
Also, I just want to say, if everyone here do have your own community, feel free to share in the chat. We can all connect and see what everyone is doing as well.
Yeah, let me drop the link to join Ahoy. Okay, let me just drop the link in case anyone wants to see it as well. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always available to like have a conversation in case you need more explanation or you need more help. I think this is the link. Okay, no, wrong link. So I'm sure with what I said, we actually have like a say or a better understanding of, I hope we have a better understanding of like how to handle DI, especially in like our community. So yeah, Pedro, I don't know if anyone has any more questions or any contributions before we bid everyone goodbye.
I think we are set. And again, I'm gonna send the recording later, and feel free to keep discussion with Jeff. Gonna have his contact there, and also we're gonna post in our community. Jeff's welcome to join the community as well and keep the discussion alive. This is such an important topic that is very frequent not speaking. So I'm sure we have much more to talk about it and to build better communities, more diverse and also more inclusive. So thanks so much again for today, Jeff. Thanks everyone for joining us here, and look forward to the next one.
Awesome. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
See everyone. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.